US of A. But it isn't just sports apparel companies, it's also the leagues they serve. Last fall, Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey was castigated viciously by the league coaches and players after he spoke in favor of democratic protests in Hong Kong. China punished the NBA by pulling their games off TV. But don't worry. Speaking with Time magazine last week, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver assured fans the relationship with China has greatly improved.
We've continued a dialogue with the Chinese, with our business partners there, in certain cases with certain government officials, and we're just going to keep at it. I understand also they have a different form of government and they have a different view of how things have been done, how things should be done, and hopefully we can find mutual respect for each other.
Just let that sink in for a moment. Find mutual respect with a country whose Communist Party literally has, hundreds of thousands of men in choke chains around the necks. I'm talking about what they do in these Muslim re-education camps. But those atrocious comments weren't made in a vacuum. They were coincidentally made on the same day that China carried out its brutal takeover of Hong Kong. So next time your favorite league or wokest brand decides to pop off about Trump, say he doesn't care about people or demand obedience to BLM, think about the atrocities they willfully ignore in favor of the almighty dollar. Joining me now is Clay Travis, Fox Sports radio host and founder of Outkick. Clay, how did we get to a point where some of these iconic, storied sports brands and leagues consider Chinese interests ahead of American interests?
Well, it's because we've allowed the NBA to be run in a despicable way, Laura, and I'm glad you're drawing attention to this because I've been talking about it on my radio show. We've been writing about it at Outkick.com, and so many people in the sports media have been ignoring it. Look, the NBA, you didn't even mention this, is going to allow players to make social justice statements instead of their names on the back of their jerseys. They're not going to allow anybody to say free Hong Kong, because if that happened, they would actually have to acknowledge that they are doing the bidding of the Chinese government. In tearing down American institutions, sports leagues are working in favor of China. They're producing propaganda that their totalitarian government uses against us, even while they have concentration camps. It drives me crazy that all of these athletes, the LeBron James, the coaches, Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, they all run them around ripping Donald Trump and ripping the United States. When really, if they wanted to stand up to anybody, they should stand up to Nike and say, hey, why don't you make your own shoes in this country that you're asking people to pay $200 to put on their kids' feet? Why don't you allow us to actually criticize in a good way, in a legitimate way, what is a new culture between America and China? Sports leagues all too often, particularly the NBA, but also Target when it comes to the Redskins, they are tearing down American institutions and values in favor of a Chinese authoritarian government. Yeah. It's despicable, it's disgraceful, and it needs to be called out.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of American companies do this, but at the same time, they're not lecturing everyone else about their morals. Now, just a reminder, here's how LeBron James responded to Daryl Morey's Hong Kong tweet last fall.
Here we go.
We all do have freedom of speech, but at times there are ramifications for the negative that can happen when you're not thinking about others and you're only thinking about yourself. So many people could have been harmed, not only financially, but physically, emotionally, spiritually. So just be careful what we tweet, what we say, and what we do.
And on the 4th of July, LeBron retweeted from Colin Kaepernick, black people have been dehumanized, brutalized, criminalized, and terrorized by America for centuries, are expected to join your commemoration of independence. While you enslaved our ancestors, we reject your celebration of white supremacy and look forward to liberation for all. Clay, got about 15 seconds. The hypocrisy here, astounding.
LeBron's an idiot.
I read today New York Times wants to tear down the Jefferson Memorial. This is all part and parcel of an attack upon American institutions. Real American sports fans have to say no. They have to hold China accountable and the leagues and players as well.
Clay, it's great to see you, and congrats on Outkick. It's really cool. And speaking of China...